Hello, everyone, and welcome to the XEP review for Obsidian's Avowed. I am your host, Luke Lore, the Insipid Ghost, and prior to us getting started, I want you to know two things. First up, Xbox provided a review code prior to launch, and secondly, I spent my time on the Xbox Series X, so that's where the core of these impressions come from. With that out of the way, let's get to it. In my 40 plus hours with Avowed, I can confidently say that this is one of the best RPGs I have played in years, bar none. Smartly designed with a digestible scope, it's very clear that Obsidian values player choice over content bloat. Each quest that I went on was purposeful, it contributed to the larger tale that was being woven, and it allowed for player choice and consequence to reign supreme overall. I may have taken just over 40 or so hours to complete the story, but I have more to do in the Living Lands. And what's more, I want to go back there. I want to continue leveling up. I want to continue crafting gear. I want to keep battling enemies. And that is an awesome feeling to have gone through this review process and still want more. After what felt like a slow start, it was very tutorial heavy and text laden in the beginning. I truly did fall in love with Avowed. Once I settled on my preferred weapon type and whether or not I wanted first or third person perspective, and then I chose the personality I wanted to inhabit for my character, Avowed absolutely came alive for me. These are all choices that you're going to have to make early on, and they can have a great impact on your experience. Simply deciding whether or not I wanted first or third person, that took time because both of them are done well. Each one has their benefits and suit certain play styles. Truly, I really did enjoy both. I played a healthy bit in both, but I found that in the end, for me, the impact of weapons felt better in first person, and that suited my gameplay style for Avowed more than third person did. I enjoyed both. I want to be really clear about that. But first person was more my preference, and that kind of made itself aware as I went through traversal and combat, etc. For me, combat was the driving force of Avowed, but it doesn't have to be for you. In many ways, combat isn't the driving force of Avowed. It's just my preferred gameplay style. I enjoyed the combat. I loved going through and dispatching the giant lizard people that are called Zarups. I really love taking down giant mobs of enemies and figuring out ways to dispel them. Heck, going after those like large dream scourge plagued bears was really cool, and I really enjoy just finding different ways to take these enemies down. It was a really rewarding gameplay loop for me of combat, traversal, and discovery. Discovering a new enchanted weapon that could freeze or burn or otherwise do some sort of special build damage led me to exploring the world in the hopes that I might discover something new along the way and then put it to use dispatching those very enemies. In doing this, I would stumble onto side quests that interwove with one another. I'd meet characters that had complex backstories and whose actions bore consequences, some of which I enjoyed, while others caused me to lament the choices I'd made as I watched the ripple effect kind of ease its way out into the world. At one point, this was a really dynamic moment for me. I saw a shadow spirit out of the corner of my screen. I turned to face it, and it turned and ran from me. So I followed it into a cave, only to be ambushed by malevolent spirits. It was awesome. This happened dynamically, organically, and I felt rewarded for the loot that I got after the fact. And that was a really cool kind of special moment that occurred in the game. And it happens a lot. Like a lot of those dynamic elements just happened for me, and I loved it. The best part of this, though, was that the traversal that the game provides had me using parkour to get to new places, and the layouts were always challenging but fair, and I felt worthy of accomplishing wherever I got to. So, like if I saw something up on a ledge, finding a way to get to it was not too difficult, but I had to think about it to get there, and I loved that. If jumping and mantling does give you pause though, like you hear that and you're like, oh, I don't know about that one. I really don't think you'll be struggling here. It's not meant to be the most difficult thing ever. I just found that it was fun, and so I sought out new ways to do it. Later on in the game, though, I kind of settled into my preferred weapon loadouts and set about leveling each one of them up, crafting things, upgrading things, and generally just pushing XP towards the build that I wanted, the abilities that I wanted. Something that would happen to me, though, is that I would change my mind. I like pistols more than I do the muskets that are in the game, but the wand, that has speed, and ooh, the axe that I just found, it's got frost damage, but I can also do an ability perk that causes bleed and gives myself an extra buff. It led me to exploring and figuring out all different types of builds that I liked. It all tied together really well as well. The best part about it, though, at least for someone like me who I'm prone to like putting XP into a side of a tree and then being like, oop, do I want it there? It is beyond easy to respec your character. And I'm so thankful for this because it means that my dialogue choices in the world, they had like, grave implications. You say the wrong thing. Ooh, you have pissed somebody off or you have made somebody really happy. But in terms of gameplay and build, you can tweak that to suit your mood in the moment. There was a night where I was going through the review process and I didn't really feel like engaging in a ton of hand to hand. All right, I switched my build up and I went range. That was awesome. And then I kind of settled into a sword and shield for standard, and then a wand pistol combo to alternate from if I need a little distance or I need to do some damage over time and get some healing in. It was dope. I loved it. One of the things that I also found was kind of with those special weapons, those enchanted weapons, where some of the biomes, fire might be more useful. If there's spider webs everywhere and you need to burn through them, fire was useful. Other biomes, poison did some better damage there. And you can kind of think through that on your own. But I found that whatever the needs were of the setting, I could build around it. And that was really fun. I didn't have to, but I got to. And that was really cool. I do want to note for anyone that's kind of like hearing this and they're like, ooh, that sounds difficult or frustrating. There are several difficulty options in the game, which are very accessible, and you can adjust those as you go through. If you're somebody that just wants to go golden path, enjoy the story, combat's not your thing, you're a very different player than I am, they've got that in there. Obsidian sets you up. If you like a more grueling, punishing experience, they set you up for that as well. I chose normal difficulty. I went in and I tweaked my HUD around some of the accessibility options that are there. You can do that with. I found that, I didn't want to have to search for some of the treasures so much. So I toggled that on. If I came near treasure that was like really special, they have some special stuff in there for you. I won't spoil for you, but it's there. I could turn it on so that it showed up on my mini map. I could turn that off too if I wanted a more like sincere exploration experience. Love that. Love the option to do that. I do want to note though, if you are playing on the standard mode, there were times where I felt some difficulty upticks where I was like, ooh, if I want to golden path this, I've got a serious challenge ahead. And so the game almost requires you to do some of those side quests, get some XP, find some special loot, build up your crafting level or whatnot. And that was not a problem for me. I actually loved it because I was enjoying so much of it, but it did happen. I did notice it. I was like, oh, I do need to go through and do a side quest here. Take it for what you will. One of Obsidian's wisest choices was to opt for open zone versus open world, and it allows them to focus their gameplay in a way that other, maybe more bloated RPG experiences tend to lack. Again, Obsidian's able to zoom in on what they want to accomplish. Some larger RPGs, they try to do more or this bigger, better type thing, and it really does kind of bring in content bloat and confusion. Not so with Avowed. Each of the zones are structured into different biomes that are going to run your gambit from oceanside or forest, volcanic, and desolate. And you get to explore each of these handcrafted areas that have a ton of personality. The environmental storytelling in Avowed is really cool. Pay attention to where bodies lay, how they might have died, what stories they might tell you without words. It was cool because the world is a character unto itself. At times, it was very clear that the architecture of man or dwarf or whatever it was an intrusion into the natural world, while other times it blended in perfectly with the large mountains or the towering trees. Very just subtle, cool, tweaked designs that let the world speak for itself. That same world is going to have a story to tell, of course, but it's displayed with this wonderful, brilliant color palette that is very unique to me among fantasy games. It does just something a little bit different than others. You're going to have some oddly inappropriate fungal growths around the world, and it's really indicative of the plague that's sweeping across the living lands. And it does set Avowed apart from other fantasy games. Again, necessary to do in a genre that is ripe with great fantasy stories. Something I also appreciated about the scope and scale of Avowed is that in all things, you can look for places where Obsidian showed restraint, not over bloating their design. A good example of this might be the loadout of your various party members. You can choose which party members join you in combat. You get to choose two. And the story allows for, I think, 6 potential party members back at camp. That's what I'm told in the interviews that I did. However, I did not have that many in my camp at one time. I think I got up to 4 at one point. Anyway, so these party members, they can be upgraded via their abilities, but not their gear. Now, on paper and out loud, that might sound frustrating, but not at all. It removed what I think is an unnecessary complexity in an adventure like this, and instead, it let me focus on the combat and the dialogue and which of the character abilities supported my playstyle. One of the things I loved, I would choose Kai. Kai would have a pistol shot that stunned his enemies and lit them on fire to do damage over time. Whenever I was getting into trouble, I would just tap Kai's button, boom. He stuns the enemy, gives me damage over time for them, and it let me recover well enough to heal or add my own dots as I pleased. If he was with me, I'm sorry, if Marius was with me, then what he could do is kind of lock enemies down with vines. So I could lock them into place so I could toss a grenade or, make use of some of my more interesting enchanted weapons. And that was really fun. One time when I was in a really particularly difficult area, I switched to have Giada with me, and she spent a good amount of time healing me as I went through. Loved that. Whatever the characters that you choose with you are, they're going to benefit you in terms of gameplay. But you don't have to bog yourself down worrying about if they want to wear one of the gloves that gives them +2 damage and they need a certain boot that gives them +1 resolve. You don't have to do that. It's not obnoxiously complex. It let me just play the game with my party members. Loved it. This is an example, I think, overall that just shows how evident Obsidian's talent is, but how they again show restraint in not letting feature creep take over the experience. Something that stood out to me was how Obsidian went about handling complex situations, and they did so in the writing with such nuance that you could have smaller conversations, larger conversations be dictated with violence, with diplomacy, with a healthy bit of snark and humor. It really did walk the line and let you be a living character unto yourself. You'll make choices and watch them ripple through the world in unique ways, ways that you're expecting, and ways in some places where you're not expecting. Some of the characters are going to reference the very small choices that you made, and larger choices, they might impact the actual visual world that you see, not just in dialogue or in little things, but in grandiose ways. I found the writing of these characters to be extremely intricate. Every one of the party members that can join you has a very rich backstory, a very complex nature about them, and a really healthy mix of emotions that comes with justifications. Like, you know why they feel the way you feel. If you look, you're going to find yourself in one of them or even all of them, just as you would anywhere when you're, meeting new people and the like. What I enjoyed about this was that I could experience their stories back at camp if I wanted to, and then I could still select whichever character suited my gameplay style. So I never missed out on any character's specific story, and I got to have the benefit of whichever one I wanted to be with me in combat. Now, obviously, we are avoiding spoilers here, but Obsidian has no qualms about putting you in a position where you are going to be faced with dire consequences in some of your choices. And almost never, almost never, I would say, is there a clear right answer. This means you have a layered narrative. There's not a binary good versus evil affair every time. The world's alive, it's complicated. Good things for one group may be bad things for another group. They might have, cost benefit pro con levels here. And it really made this world feel more than the sum of its parts. The choices that you make in this world are going to feel akin to many of the real world choices that you have to make in kind of modern times right now. So, in your politics, in your medicine, in your choice of friends, in your choice of family, whatever the unique choices in life that make you you, your character has seemingly parallel moments where you're going to be asking yourself, what do I want my character to do? For me, my character is almost always this really good, positive person that tries to do the right thing all the time. And I didn't always get that option. One conversation I had with an assassin gave me a really good perspective on that assassin's rebellion struggle. So I had to weigh the cost of bringing this assassin to justice versus what it might do to the rebellion and the fighting the good fight that they were going through. Every one of those choices impacted my faction, the group that I represented, and really put a kind of a kink in the workings of whatever character I was trying to create in the best of ways. For all the praise that I have heaped on Avowed, I do think I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that at the time and just prior to launch of like going through this review and recording, there were some performance issues. Not a lot, just like little odd hiccups in lighting or frame rate dips here and there, but nothing that damaged my overall experience for it. In fact, I come away still loving this game. For context, I want you to know I did choose performance mode. That's where I tend to live and breathe. I don't prefer quality mode, so I went performance mode. I saw a few hiccups here and there, but I think you can anticipate a healthy dose of updates as Avowed lives its life, as it were. So don't get stuck on that. Don't get worried about the performance. It was never a detriment to the overall quality of the experience. No crashes or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. To wrap this one up, guys, let me say very clearly, I love Avowed. I want more Avowed. Avowed is my favorite RPG in years. It stands among my favorite RPGs of our time, and that's a high bar given some of the incredible games we've had kind of inhabit this space. Obsidian has crafted an incredible world, really engaging combat, and I think it would be a mistake to miss this one. That's going to be it for me. Please consider subscribing, dropping a like, or supporting XEP as we continue to bring great coverage of Xbox adjacent content and gaming adjacent content, and in general, just supporting creators. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.
Oh, no, you don't.
On your left.